I was at the beach with my grandkids when I got a strange text that said, "Leave right now and be quiet. Don't say anything to the kids." A chill ran down my spine, but I did what it said. What I discovered was their terrifying plan, and the cops were already on their way. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my revenge story from. I want to know how far it's reached. The golden sun was shining like it was pouring honey over Clearwater Beach, covering the water in a blanket of sparkling light. I walked slowly on the fine sand, holding the hands of Matthew and Valerie, my 2 little grandkids. Every step they took kicked up sand, and their bright laughter echoed as I showed them how to pack the sand down to build a solid castle. A little ways off, Claire, my daughter, was sitting peacefully in a folding chair under a big beach umbrella. She was putting on more sunscreen while holding her phone on a video call with Kevin, her husband. Claire's voice sounded cheerful, louder than the sound of the waves. "Look, the kids are building a beautiful sand castle." She moved the phone to show Matthew and Valerie focused on their game. In the background, I heard Kevin's laugh through the screen, his gentle voice warning, "Remember to put sunscreen on the kids." Claire nodded, smiling brightly. Seeing my daughter so happy made me smile without even thinking about it. Claire was always my pride and joy, a young, dedicated mother, a wife who loves her husband. Kevin, my son-in-law, was just as thoughtful. He was the one who organized this trip, from the VIP coach to the luxury villa. But in the end, he couldn't come because he got sick suddenly. I got up, brushed the sand off my hands, and walked toward the nearby public shower to wash them. The sand was stuck to me, and I had to scrub for a bit, thinking I should bring more wet wipes from the villa. Just then, the phone in my pocket vibrated with a short, sharp buzz. I took it out, thinking it was a message from a relative. But no, the screen showed an unknown number with no name saved. The message was just one line: "Leave quietly. Don't say anything to the kids." My heart leaped as if someone had squeezed it. That sentence was cold, sharp as a razor, with no explanation or clue who sent it. I stood frozen, clutching the phone in my hand, my eyes scanning the beach. Families were still enjoying the ocean, kids were chasing the waves, music from the bar was playing cheerfully. Everything seemed normal, as if nothing had happened. But inside my chest, a sense of unease began to creep in, as cold as the seawater soaking through my clothes. Who sent that message? Why me and the kids? Did it mean Matthew and Valerie? Or was it referring to something else? I tried to take a deep breath, telling myself it was probably just a harmless prank. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. At 65 years old, I'd lived long enough to know that my intuition is almost never wrong. I looked at Claire, still laughing on the phone, then at my 2 grandkids focused on their castle. Everything was still calm, but that message was like a small crack breaking the happy scene before my eyes. Just then, Matthew ran up to me, pulling gently on my hand. "Grandma, buy me an ice cream. I want chocolate." His voice was pure, but I jumped, almost dropping my phone. I quickly put it in my pocket and forced a smile. "Okay, let's go get one." I took Matthew's hand and led Valerie over to the nearby ice cream stand. With every step, I couldn't stop looking back, my eyes scanning every unfamiliar face on the beach. Was someone following me? Or was it just my imagination? The line at the ice cream stand was pretty long enough for me to have time to take out my phone and look again. The sentence was still there, alone, with no new information. "Leave quietly. Don't say anything to the kids." I repeated it in my head, trying to analyze every word. But the more I thought, the more tangled my thoughts became. Who could have sent that message? And why did it have to be quietly? If there was real danger, why not just call the police right away? The questions piled up, but there were no answers. As I was thinking, my gaze landed on a small drink stand at the edge of the beach. A young man with a baseball cap, pulled down over his eyebrows, and sunglasses was sitting there, a coffee in his hand. But he didn't seem to take his eyes off us. He pretended to look at the sea, but I was sure I saw him glance my way several times. My heart started beating faster. Was he the one who sent the message, or just a random passerby? I tried to stay calm, but my hands were starting to shake. At that moment, Valerie burst into tears, sobbing, "I want strawberry ice cream. Matthew took it from me." My granddaughter's crying snapped me out of my thoughts, but it also made my head spin even more. I quickly knelt down to comfort her. There. Grandma will buy you another strawberry ice cream. Don't cry anymore." I stroked her hair, but inside, I couldn't stop thinking about that message. I put the phone in my purse, trying to focus on the kids, but the feeling of unease had already stuck to me like an invisible shadow. Back with Claire, I tried to speak in a calm voice. "I'm going to the villa to get more drinks and tissues. Watch the kids for a minute." Claire nodded, still focused on her phone, not noticing the tension I was trying to hide. I left Matthew and Valerie with her and started on the stone path that led up to the villa. With every step, I felt my heart pounding, like it wanted to burst out of my chest. I didn't dare look back right away, but after walking a little way, I cast a quick glance over my shoulder. The young man in the cap had stood up, his hands in his pockets, walking slowly in my direction. That gesture was like a knife twisting in my fear when I set foot on the wooden steps leading to the villa. Every creak under my shoes brought back memories of this trip. Every step, every sound dragged me back to the days before, when everything was still full of joy and hope. It all started 2 months earlier when Kevin enthusiastically suggested this vacation. I still remember that night clearly. The whole family gathered in the small living room. Kevin was on the sofa, his eyes shining, swiping through pictures of Clearwater on his phone. "Mom, Claire, kids, we need an unforgettable vacation," he said in an excited voice. Clearwater is like paradise with blue water, white sand, and I've already found a perfect villa with a private pool. Claire, my daughter, beamed, hugging her husband's arm while I just smiled, thinking how considerate my son-in-law was. Matthew and Valerie were shouting with joy, wanting to go swimming and build sandcastles. Seeing my daughter's family so happy filled my heart, as if all the worries of daily life had vanished. Kevin took care of everything, from the VIP coach tickets with sleeper seats from Atlanta to Clearwater, to booking this luxurious villa for 5 days. He sent pictures of the villa to the family group chat, showing off the modern amenities, a spacious living room, fully equipped kitchen, and a pool with an ocean view. I still remember Claire marveling, "You're incredible, Kevin. Mom, do you see how thoughtful my husband is?" I nodded, feeling proud of my son-in-law. Kevin was always a family man, always looking out for Claire and the kids. Just one day before we were supposed to leave, everything changed suddenly. Kevin told Claire, his voice weak over the speakerphone, "I have a high fever. I don't think I can go right away. You take Mom and the kids first. I'll rest for a few days and catch up with you later." Claire got nervous, worried about her husband, and at the same time rushing with the preparations. I watched her run back and forth, checking every suitcase, muttering nonstop, "Why right now? His fever is so high, what if something happens?" I took Claire's hand and calmed her down. "Don't worry, Kevin is strong. He'll be fine after a few days of rest. I'll help you take care of the kids." Claire nodded, though her eyes still reflected her anxiety. The morning we left, I still remember Kevin clearly. Even though he said he was tired, he made the effort to carry every suitcase to the car. He was wearing a light t-shirt, his forehead beaded with sweat, but he still smiled. "Claire, did you double-check everything? Don't forget anything." Then he bent down to hug Matthew and Valerie tightly. "Be good. Listen to Grandma and Mom. I'll be there to play with you soon." Valerie clung to her dad's neck, while Matthew held his hand and said excitedly, "Dad, get better soon so you can go to the beach with me." Kevin smiled, patting their heads, and then turned to me. He looked at me tenderly, though with something hard to describe in his eyes. "Mom, I'm entrusting Claire and the kids to you. You take care of your health too." I nodded and put a hand on his shoulder. "Don't you worry, I'll take care of everyone." The bus ride from Atlanta to Clearwater took over 10 hours. Claire sat next to me, busy answering work messages and checking her phone from time to time to text Kevin. Mom, he said he still has a fever, but he took some medicine, she commented, her voice full of worry. I just mumbled a reply and patted her shoulder gently to calm her down. Matthew was focused on the iPad, playing a puzzle game, while Valerie fell asleep on my lap, her soft hair brushing against my hand. Seeing my grandkids, I felt a sense of peace, though also a bit of emptiness. At my age, long family trips don't happen as often, and I cherished every moment with Claire and the kids. When the bus stopped at a rest stop halfway, I took Matthew and Valerie to buy water and pastries. The heat was suffocating. The heavy air made me uncomfortable. While I was in line, I happened to notice a burly man, wearing a light jacket despite the weather. He was standing in a corner lighting a cigarette, his eyes fixed on our bus. His eyes were cold, emotionless, as if he were watching something too closely. I tried to ignore him, thinking it was probably just my imagination. But when I got back on the bus, I felt his gaze still on me, and a shiver ran down my spine. Mom, what's wrong? Claire asked when she saw me quiet. I shook my head and forced a smile. Nothing, I think I'm just tired. When we got to Clearwater, all the check-in procedures were surprisingly fast. The villa manager, a middle-aged man with a friendly smile, barely heard Claire's name before he immediately handed over the keys and an envelope with all the documents. Mr. Kevin took care of everything, don't you worry, just enjoy your stay, he said cheerfully. I was a little surprised, but I also felt proud of my son-in-law's dedication. In the villa's living room, there was a basket of fresh fruit on the table, next to a handwritten card, wishing you a happy family vacation, Kevin. Claire exclaimed excitedly, Mom, look at this. He really is a wonderful husband. I smiled and nodded, but I couldn't help but wonder. Since when was Kevin so detail-oriented? He rarely bothered with these little things. Now I step into the villa, my feet as heavy as if they had stones tied to them. The air inside the house still holds the scent of the fruit from the basket Kevin left, but now it can no longer calm the storm raging inside me. I thought I had enough experience to face anything, but the mysterious message on the beach and the stare of the young man in the cap had completely unsettled me. The kitchen is just as it was when we left for the beach. The snack bags that Claire had hastily opened for Matthew and Valerie are still scattered on the table, with a few crumbs sprinkled on the glass. I walked past without stopping, my eyes fixed on the hallway that leads to the basement. The old wooden door at the end, which was normally just used to store floaties, folding chairs, and some tools, suddenly made me shudder. My gut told me that if there was an answer to the message, it had to be somewhere in this villa. I pushed the door open slowly, and the hinges creaked softly like a warning. I flipped the switch, and a dim, yellowish light barely illuminated the dust particles floating in the air. The cold, damp tile floor made me slip a little. I grabbed the handrail of the stairs, my heart pounding hard as I went down step by step. Each step took me deeper into a secret I probably didn't want to uncover. In the corner of the basement, 3 blue plastic drums caught my eye. They were lined up with labels that said used oil, stuck on with silver duct tape. But the air didn't smell like oil. It was a strong, piercing smell that I recognized immediately. Gasoline. I felt my heart stop for a second. Gasoline in a vacation villa? I got closer, my hands trembling, and touched the lid of the first one. I knew I shouldn't, but I had to check. The lid came off and the smell of gasoline hit me straight on, forcing me to cough and cover my mouth with my sleeve. I backed away, my eyes burning and my head spinning. Who brought these drums here? And why? I scanned the basement, looking for more clues. Next to the drums, a thick roll of electrical wire stretched from an outlet on the wall to a strange device in the corner. I followed the wire, my heart hammering in my chest. When I touched the device, I saw it was an electronic timer. The screen showed blinking red numbers. 02 beat 2 in the morning or 2 hours. I didn't understand, but that number felt like an invisible threat, making my skin crawl. What was this timer for? And why was it here, in the basement of the villa Kevin had so carefully chosen for us? I turned toward the door that led to the garage and noticed it was slightly ajar. A gust of cold air came through, bringing with it an even stronger smell of gasoline. I crossed the threshold. The basement light barely reached what was inside. Some cardboard boxes, plastic bags, and several disposable lighters were scattered on the floor. I bent down and picked one up, my hand shaking so much I almost dropped it. Nearby, in a small metal box, I found an untouched box of matches and some electrical devices that looked like detonators. Each object was like a piece of a terrifying puzzle, and I knew I was facing a sinister plan that I couldn't yet fully understand. Just then I heard footsteps coming down from upstairs, along with Claire's voice calling, "Mom, where are you?" I jumped, nearly dropping the lighter. My heart was racing as if I'd been caught doing something forbidden. I quickly closed the lid of the gas can, dragged an old stepladder to cover the basement door, and walked out into the hallway, pretending I was coming from inside the house. Claire appeared at the end of the hall, carrying Valerie in her arms while Matthew ran behind her. "What are you doing in here, Mom?" Claire asked, a hint of surprise in her eyes. I forced a smile and in a shaky voice replied, "Oh, I forgot my wallet in the bedroom. I was just going to get it." Valerie, hugging her doll, excitedly insisted, "Mommy, let's go to the beach. I want to make another castle." Claire smiled, gently pinching the little girl's cheek. "Okay, first let me get you changed." When mother and daughter disappeared toward the door, I crept back to the basement, my heart still pounding hard. I looked at the timer again. 02:01. That red number burned in my mind as if it were branded there. I didn't know what it meant, but my gut told me our time was running out. I took out my phone, my hands shaking so much I had to grip it tightly to press the camera button. I photographed the gas cans, the roll of electrical wire, the timer, and then hid everything in a secret album. I didn't dare delete them, but I couldn't leave them in a visible place either. Each photo was evidence, but also an unbearable weight on my shoulders. I went back to the beach and told Claire, "Honey, I'm going to run out for a minute to buy more snacks for everyone," I said, trying to sound as natural as possible. Claire looked up and smiled. "Mom, hurry back. The kids are already asking for more cookies." I nodded, faking a smile, though inside all I wanted to do was run away from that place immediately. I left the villa and followed the stone path down towards the small market near the beach. The afternoon breeze was cool, carrying the salty smell of the sea, but it couldn't put out the fire of anxiety burning in my chest. As I rounded a curve, I noticed the old red truck, parked in the same spot where I'd seen it that morning. It was parked under the shade of a tree, too perfect to be a coincidence. Inside, a burly man with his shirt untucked was holding a newspaper pretending to read, but when I slowed my pace, deliberately stretching out my walk, I clearly saw the glint of his eyes in the rearview mirror, fixed on me. He didn't move, but his gaze was cold, like a predator watching its prey. My heart beat faster, but I forced myself to stay calm and keep walking as if nothing was wrong. I went into the nearby 7-Eleven, pretending I was just there to shop. Inside, the fluorescent lights shone brightly. The smell of freshly baked bread hung in the air, but I couldn't pay attention to anything. I randomly grabbed a few bottles of soda, a bag of cookies, and a box of candy for Matthew and Valerie, but my eyes never left the front window. Just as I suspected when I left the store, the red truck started up silently. The engine was quiet, but loud enough for me to understand it was following me. It wasn't going fast, keeping a calculated distance, as if it wanted me to know it was there without raising suspicion. I gripped the shopping bag tightly, trying to control my breathing, but inside me, the unease had already turned into a storm. To check if this guy was really following me or not, I quickly crossed the street and went into a small fruit stand on the other side. The owner, a middle-aged woman with a friendly smile, greeted me. "Hello, Mom. Would you like to buy some mangoes? I picked them this morning. They're super sweet." I nodded, pretending to ask the price. "How much for a pound of mangoes?" While she answered, I glanced through the glass door. The red truck had stopped not far away, right under a street light. The man took out his phone, said something very short, and hung up. He wasn't looking directly at me, but I knew he was watching my every move. Every action of his was like a knife deepening my fear. Who is this man? What does he want from my family? I bought a bag of mangoes, thanked the woman, and left, deliberately walking slower to observe. The truck didn't move right away, but I felt the guy's eyes glued to my back. I returned to the villa with a heavy heart, but I forced myself to keep a calm face as I entered the house. Claire was sitting with the kids at the table, helping Valerie wipe the sand off her hands. "Mom, you took so long," she teased affectionately, then turned to Matthew. "Look, Grandma bought you the cookies you like." Matthew shouted with joy, ran to grab the bag, and Valerie jumped up and down, asking for candy. I smiled at them, but it was a forced smile, as if I had to use all my strength to hide the storm inside me. During dinner, Claire happily mentioned that Kevin had just texted her. "He says his fever is down, but he's still a little tired," she said, in a carefree tone, her eyes shining when she mentioned her husband. I nodded, but inside a hard-to-explain feeling washed over me. I probed, "Did Kevin say when he's coming, honey?" Claire shook her head. "Not yet, Mom. I guess he needs to rest a few more days, but he told us to have fun, that he'll be here soon." I mumbled an "uh-huh," forcing a smile, but in my mind, the images of the gas cans and the timer in the basement were crystal clear. Kevin is thoughtful, but isn't he a little too thoughtful? And that man in the red truck, could he have something to do with him? After dinner, when Claire took the kids upstairs to bed, I was left alone on the balcony. The sea wind blew strongly, carrying the murmur of the waves and the chirping of insects. I looked into the distance, where the lights of other villas reflected on the water like stars. But that scenery couldn't calm the fire of anxiety burning in my chest. I felt like a trapped animal, not knowing where the hunter was, but sure that he was very close. Suddenly, my phone vibrated, cutting through my thoughts. It was the same unknown number from the afternoon. A new message appeared on the screen. "Get out of there right now, your family is in danger. I've already called the police, they're on their way." My hand trembled and I almost dropped the phone. I read and reread the sentence, each word like a hammer blow to my heart. "Your family is in danger." The warning was clearer but also more terrifying. Who was sending this message? And how did they know my family was here? I looked down at the street, where the red truck was still motionless under the yellow light of the lamppost. The man inside wasn't moving, but I knew he was still watching. I stood up, gripping the balcony railing tightly, trying to piece together the loose fragments in my head. The gas cans, the timer, the man following me, and now this message. It all pointed to the same thing. There was a plan in motion against us. But why? And who was behind it? Kevin? No, I don't want to believe it. He's Claire's husband, Matthew, and Valerie's father. But the evidence before my eyes, his unusual attentiveness, the too perfect villa, and the fact that he didn't come with us wouldn't let me push the suspicion away. The sea kept murmuring, but in my mind, only one question echoed. Who is setting a trap for us? Who is sending these messages, and why are they warning me in secret? I went back into the living room. The warm yellow light fell on the sofa where, just a few hours ago, Matthew and Valerie's laughter had echoed. Now everything had a fake tranquility that was terrifying. I sat down, clutching the phone in my hand, my chest heavy, as if the whole world was crashing down on me. I've seen all kinds of storms in my life, but I'd never felt as helpless as I did now. The gas cans in the basement, the timer blinking with intense red numbers, the red truck outside, and the warning message. It was all like pieces of a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I wanted to scream, to run and hug Claire and the kids, but the instruction, "Don't say anything to the kids," from the first message held me back, like an invisible rope tying me down. Suddenly, the phone started ringing insistently, each ring like a jolt to my heart. It was the same unknown number. I opened it and a series of new messages appeared, accompanied by screenshots of a conversation. I looked, and as soon as I read the first line, my heart stopped. It was a message between Kevin and a contact saved as Mike. The content was cold and sharp as a knife. At 2 a.m. sharp, the system will activate automatically. We need to make sure the villa burns completely without a trace. I already have the perfect alibi. Mike replied in just a few words. Got it. The truck will always be in sight. My blood ran cold. The phone almost slipped from my trembling hand. I bit my lip, trying to calm down, but my head was spinning. Kevin, the son-in-law I trusted, the husband Claire loves, the father of Matthew and Valerie, was the one behind such a terrible conspiracy. I shook my head, not wanting to believe it, but the words on the screen were blows that shattered any hope. Burns completely without a trace. That phrase repeated in my head, and a shiver ran through me. What did he want? The insurance money? Or some secret I didn't know about yet? I quickly took screenshots of every screen, my fingers shaking so much I had to tap several times. I emailed them to my personal account and hid them in a hidden folder, as if it were the only way to keep the evidence safe. Every click made my heart clench. I didn't know what I was up against, but I knew that if those messages were real, my family was facing death's scythe. I went to the window and peeked through the curtain to look outside. The red truck was still motionless under the yellowish street light, like a beast lying in wait. The man inside had just lit a cigarette, and the white smoke rose into the night, mixing with the dim light. He didn't move, but I felt his gaze, cold and calculating. Was that Mike, the one Kevin had mentioned? I yanked the curtain shut, trying to contain the rising panic. I wanted to call the police right away, but the last message, I've already called the police, they're on their way, made me hesitate. If the police were on their way, what should I do now? Wait or act. Suddenly Claire's voice came from behind me. Mom, you're not asleep. Is something wrong? I jumped, shoved the phone into my purse, and turned with a forced smile. Claire had just come downstairs, her hair pulled up high, wearing a loose, comfortable t-shirt. Her expression showed a little concern, as if she had sensed something was off. I tried to stay calm. Oh, nothing. I just have a little indigestion. Must have been from eating too much seafood. Claire smiled and went to the cabinet to get a glass of water. Here, have some warm water, I'll get it for you. But as she turned around, I caught a shadow of suspicion in her eyes. Claire was always sensitive, and I knew I couldn't hide it from her for much longer. Claire offered me the glass of warm water with a sweet voice. Go get some rest, Mom. We want to go to the beach again tomorrow. I nodded and took a sip, but its warmth couldn't quell the chills spreading through me. When Claire went up to her room, I collapsed onto the sofa, my head in my hands. I knew I couldn't stay quiet any longer. If the message was true, at 2 a.m. this villa would go up in flames, and none of us, me, Claire, Matthew, Valerie, would have a way out. But how could I tell Claire that her husband, the man she loves and trusts, was planning to destroy everything? The wall clock in the living room struck 11 p.m. Each tick was like a hammer blow to my chest. I knew I couldn't delay any longer. If the message was right, there were only 3 hours left before everything could turn to ash. I had to tell Claire, even if it might break her heart. I took a deep breath, forced myself to calm down, and went up the stairs to Claire's room. The dim yellow light from the hallway brushed against the wooden walls, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper something unsettling. I knocked gently on the door. The sound was sharp in the quiet. Claire, can I come in? I called, trying to sound calm. From inside, Claire's voice answered, a little sleepy but still sweet. Come in, Mom. I'm not asleep. I pushed the door open and saw her picking up Matthew and Valerie's toys from the floor. A little red car was rolling next to Valerie's doll, and I suddenly remembered the red truck outside, which made my heart clench. I closed the door, walked over to Claire, and sat on the edge of the bed. Claire, I need to talk to you. It's very important, I said in a low voice, almost a whisper. Claire looked up, a hint of surprise on her face. She put down the doll, sat up, and her usual smile vanished. What's wrong? Why so serious? She asked with clear concern. Seeing my daughter's clear eyes, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. Claire always trusted Kevin, was always proud of her attentive husband. How could I tell her that this same man was plotting to destroy their entire family? I took another breath, gathered all my courage, and took out my phone. Claire, listen to me. I don't want to scare you, but you need to know the truth. I opened the hidden photo album and showed her the pictures one by one. The gas cans in the basement, the roll of electrical wire, and the timer with the number 0280 in bright red. Claire looked at the screen, and her expression slowly filled with confusion. "Mom, what is this? Why is there gasoline in the villa?" Her voice trembled as if searching for a logical explanation. I swallowed hard and kept scrolling to the messages from the strange number, including the conversation between Kevin and Mike. "At 2 a.m. the system will activate automatically. We need to make sure the villa burns and leaves no trace. I already have the perfect alibi," I read aloud, my voice cracking. Claire grabbed the phone, her eyes fixed on the screen, and her face turned white as a sheet. "No, it can't be," Claire murmured, her voice broken, almost inaudible. "He was sick, Mom. Kevin was still worried about us. It can't be him." Tears started to roll down her cheeks, falling onto the blanket and leaving small, damp circles. Seeing her like this, I felt my heart break. I wanted to hug her, to tell her it was all a misunderstanding, but the evidence in front of us was too clear. I squeezed Claire's hand tightly, pulling her back to reality. "Claire, listen to me. There are several gas cans and a device with a timer in the basement. Outside, there's a man in a red truck watching us. This isn't made up. I saw it with my own eyes." Claire shook her head, her eyes full of panic, as if trying to cling to the slightest hope. Maybe someone set him up, Mom. Kevin wouldn't do this to me or to Matthew and Valerie." Her voice broke, tears flowing uncontrollably. "He loves the kids, you know that. The day we said goodbye, he hugged them. He asked you to take care of me and the kids. How could he—" Claire stopped, covered her face, and her shoulders began to shake. Seeing my daughter suffer like this was like a knife twisting in my chest. I wanted to scream, to curse Kevin for betraying Claire's love, but I knew this wasn't the time for anger. I had to be strong for my daughter and my grandkids. "Claire, I know you don't want to believe it." "Neither do I, but we can't take that risk." I held her hand firmly, speaking slowly, trying to give her strength. "What I saw, these messages, it all points to the same thing. We're in danger. If this villa is going to burn at 2 in the morning, we have to leave now." Claire looked up, her eyes red, but she still shook her head. "Mom, if this is true, I have to call Kevin. I have to ask him directly. Maybe there's a mistake." She reached for her phone, but I stopped her immediately. "No, Claire. If Kevin is behind this, calling him now will only alert him. We don't have time anymore." The wall clock read 11:45. Time waits for no one, and I knew that if I hesitated for another minute, my whole family could be consumed by the fire that Kevin and this Mike person had planned. I went to Claire, who was still sitting on the sofa, clutching a cushion as if it were her last refuge. "Claire, listen to me," I said, my tone harsher than usual. "We have to leave now. At 2 in the morning, this house is going to burn. Didn't you see the gas cans, the timer, and Kevin's messages?" Claire looked up, her eyes swollen, her voice weak but firm. "Mom, I don't believe Kevin would do that. He loves me. He loves the kids. There must be a mistake. I want to stay. I want to wait for him to explain it to me." Her words were like a knife, both painful and infuriating. I wanted to scream, to shake her so she would snap out of it, but I knew it wasn't the time to argue. I just squeezed her hand, my voice softening though I remained firm. "I won't force you, but I'm taking Matthew and Valerie right now. You stay, but I'll be back for you. Promise me you won't do anything crazy." Claire looked at me, her eyes filled with pain. I knew she was still clinging to the hope that Kevin was innocent, and I didn't have time to convince her anymore. I rushed to the bedroom, gently shaking Matthew and Valerie awake. The 2 kids were fast asleep, their hair messy, murmuring in their dreams. "Matthew, Valerie, wake up," I whispered, trying to keep my voice as soft as possible. "Grandma's going to take you to the little store to buy cakes and juice. It'll be fun." Valerie opened her eyes, still sleepy, but immediately exclaimed, "Cakes, Grandma? I want strawberry candy." Matthew sat up, rubbed his eyes, excited. "I want chocolate cookies." Seeing the 2 kids so innocent, my heart ached. They had no idea I was trying to save them from a deadly trap. I put on a light coat, tied their shoes, and took their hands to go downstairs. Claire was at the door, a conflicted look on her face, as if she wanted to come, but her feet wouldn't move. I turned around, took her hand one last time. I'm taking the kids somewhere safe first. You stay here, I'll be back for you, okay? Claire nodded, but I saw her lips tremble, as if trying to hold back tears. I hugged her tightly and then left with Matthew and Valerie, my heart as heavy as lead. To avoid the eyes of the man in the red truck, I led the kids through an alley beside the villa. The alley was dark, with only the dim light from a few nearby houses. I squeezed Matthew and Valerie's hands tightly, my heart pounding, not daring to look back. Luckily, when I glanced over, the man in the truck seemed busy on his phone, not paying attention to us. I sighed in relief, but I didn't relax. Grandma, why are we going to buy things in the middle of the night? Valerie asked in her innocent voice. Why didn't Mom come with us? Matthew added, clutching his toy car. I forced a smile, making up an excuse. Oh, it's because I want to take you to the beach early tomorrow and I need to get some food ready. Mom is tired and stayed behind to rest. The kids nodded, not asking any more questions. But their questions were like little knives that increased my worry for Claire. The 24-hour convenience store was bright in the middle of the night, the fluorescent light blinding me. I bought milk, cookies, juice, and a bag of strawberry candies for Valerie to distract them. The young clerk, with a name tag that read John, asked me curiously, You're still taking the kids out for a walk this late? Aren't you scared it's dangerous? I smiled nervously, my voice trembling. Yeah, the kids wanted snacks, and I spoiled them a little. He nodded, not asking any more questions, but his curious gaze made me more tense. I took Matthew and Valerie to a small corner with some plastic chairs. Sit here and eat your cookies. Grandma is just going to get a few more things and I'll be right back, I told them, leaving the bag next to them. While the kids were busy with their cookies, I stepped away to a corner near the register and took out my phone. My hands were shaking so much I had to grip it to dial the number. I called 911, my voice very low, almost a whisper. Hello? I need to report an emergency. The villa I'm renting in Clearwater is set up to be burned down. There are gas cans and a timer in the basement, and a man in a red truck is watching us. The operator, in a calm but firm voice, asked me to confirm the location. I gave him the villa's address, my voice shaking. Please come quickly, my family is in danger. The operator reassured me. Stay calm, Mom. A patrol car is on its way. Find a safe place and wait for us. I hung up immediately, not daring to say more, afraid the man in the truck might hear me. I went back to Matthew and Valerie, feeling a little relieved, knowing the police were on their way. But I couldn't shake my worry for Claire. I looked at my 2 grandkids, chewing their candy without a care, and told myself that at least they were safe. But what about Claire? She was still in the villa, clinging to the idea that Kevin was innocent. I couldn't let my daughter face the danger alone. I turned to John, the store clerk, trying to keep my voice calm. John, could you watch the kids for a minute? I forgot something at the villa. I'll be right back. John nodded, smiling kindly. Of course, ma'am, don't worry. I'll watch the kids. I thanked him. Then turned to Matthew and Valerie. Stay here with John. Grandma will be right back. Valerie hugged her doll and nodded. Okay, Grandma, come back soon. I ran through the dark alley, my legs aching as if an invisible force were pushing me. I was breathing in short gasps, my heart beating so hard it felt like it was going to explode. I had only one thought. Get Claire out of that villa before it was too late. But when I was still a few hundred feet away, a sharp smell of gasoline and burning plastic hit me full in the nose and stopped me in my tracks. I felt my heart drop, and icy fear running down my spine. I looked up and saw, right in front of me, a red flame bursting from the villa's second-floor window. In an instant, the fire spread, devouring the whole house with cracks and pops like a roaring, hungry monster. Claire! I screamed, unable to hold it back, my voice breaking in the night wind. I ran toward the villa, ignoring the searing heat coming from the distance. Every step was like entering a nightmare. where I could only think of my daughter trapped in that deadly house. I didn't know if the fire had started by accident or if someone had set it off early. All I knew was that I couldn't lose Claire. No, never. Black smoke billowed from the front door, so thick I could barely see the way. I pushed the door and went in, the heat hitting my face, burning me as if I'd been thrown into a fire. My eyes stung, tears streaming uncontrollably, but I kept screaming, "Claire! Where are you? Answer, Mom!" Amidst the cracking of burning furniture, I heard a loud cough from the living room. I ran toward it, nearly tripping on the red-hot wooden floor. Claire was trying to crawl, her clothes soaked with smoke, her hair tangled, her face pale from lack of oxygen. She whispered, her eyes filled with panic. I knelt, grabbed her hand, and pulled her up. "Honey, get up. Mom will get you out of here," I told her, my voice shaky but firm. Claire was weak, leaning on me, but we only made it a few steps before we realized the back exit was blocked by fire. The curtains were burning and falling into ash. Pieces of wood from the ceiling started to fall, each thud like a warning that our time was running out. The fire was spreading fast, surrounding us like a merciless, ferocious beast. I coughed hard, trying to drag Claire toward the window, but the heat had shattered the glass, the fragments falling and cutting my hands. Claire collapsed, too weak to go on. "Mom, I can't go on," she whispered, her eyes closing. I panicked, hugged her, and pulled with all my strength. "Claire, you have to hold on. Mom won't leave you here." I beat on the window frame, but it was useless. The glass was already gone, and the heat outside was even more terrifying. I felt despair, as if the whole world were collapsing around me. I had promised to protect her, but now all I could do was hold her tight, praying for a miracle. Just then, the sirens of fire trucks and police cars blared through the air, tearing through the night. A voice over a loudspeaker came through, loud but reassuring. "Is anyone in there? Stay calm. We're coming to rescue you." I heard hurried footsteps, the sound of high-pressure water. Several firefighters in protective gear burst through the thick smoke. One quickly placed an oxygen mask on me. The fresh air made me snap back to reality. Another lifted Claire into his arms and shouted, "Out now, follow me!" I stumbled behind him, clinging tightly to the firefighter's arm, as if it were the last thing keeping me alive. When we reached the soaked lawn outside, I collapsed, gasping for breath, my body shaking uncontrollably. The night air was cool, but I still felt a searing heat, as if the flames were still burning inside me. Tourists from the nearby villas had gathered, murmuring among themselves, their faces a mix of fear and curiosity. I didn't care. I was only looking for Claire, who was being placed on a stretcher while a paramedic put an oxygen mask on her. Claire was still conscious, her tear-filled eyes looking at me, and in a choked voice she said, "Mom, I should have believed you. Forgive me." Her words were like a knife, painful but also a relief. Claire was alive, and that was all that mattered. Suddenly I heard rushed footsteps and Valerie's crying voice, "Grandma!" I turned and saw the two kids being led from a patrol car by a female police officer. Valerie ran to me, clung to me tightly, and sobbed, "Grandma, I was so scared. Our house burned all the way down." Matthew stood beside her, his eyes red, still holding his toy car. I hugged them both with all my strength, tears flowing uncontrollably. "Grandma's here, it's okay. You're safe now," I whispered, my voice choked. Looking at them, I felt my strength return, even though the pain was tearing me apart inside. Just a few hours ago, that villa was filled with their laughter. Now, nothing was left but ashes. A tall police officer approached me. He introduced himself as Lieutenant Miller, his voice calm but firm. "Are you all right, ma'am? We received a report of an arson with a booby trap. Clearly, this was no accident. We're going to investigate it thoroughly." I nodded, my voice trembling. "Thank you." I saw a gas can and a timer in the basement, and there was a guy in a red truck following us. Miller jotted it down quickly and then assured me, "We've secured the scene. You and your family get some rest. We'll take it from here." After the fire, Claire and I were taken to the hospital, where the smell of disinfectant and the constant beeping of machines made my anguish even heavier. I was used to physical pain, but this time the blow was to my soul, the betrayal of Kevin, the son-in-law I had loved like a son, and the image of Claire on the verge of death in the flames were wounds that could never close. I stayed by her bed, holding her hand, my eyes never leaving her pale face. Claire was weak, but luckily she had only suffered from smoke inhalation, with no serious injuries. Matthew and Valerie were being looked after by female officers in a safe room at the police station, and I could only pray that those children wouldn't be scarred by what they had been through. The next morning, as the first rays of sun filtered through the hospital window, Officer Miller entered the room, looking serious but also reassuring. He sat in the plastic chair next to the bed and spoke in a grave voice. "Mrs. Rose, I have an update on the case." I squeezed Claire's hand tightly, my heart pounding in my chest, bracing myself for what I was about to hear. Miller said that Kevin had been arrested at his apartment in Atlanta that same night. When we went in, he was still in his pajamas, faking a fever and playing completely innocent, Miller said, his gaze sharp. But when we searched, we found a suitcase full of cash, dozens of receipts for lost football bets, and a second phone. On it were messages that matched the evidence you gave us. Hearing that, I felt something tighten in my chest. It turned out that everything Kevin had done, from the vacation, the luxury villa, to his thoughtful gestures, was part of a cruel plan. I looked at Claire, who was biting her lip, her eyes glassy. He really did that," Claire whispered, her voice broken as if she still didn't want to accept the truth. I squeezed her hand harder, holding back my own tears. "It's okay, honey, I'm here," I told her. Though inside I was boiling with rage and pain, Kevin had not only betrayed Claire, but he had also endangered the lives of Matthew and Valerie, two innocent children. Miller continued. "We also caught Mike, the one driving the red truck. We got him as he was trying to flee Clearwater. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Mike confessed everything. Kevin hired him to set off the explosion in the villa and make it look like an electrical short." I nodded, but my mind was numb. It all fit with what I had seen: the gas cans, the timer, and the cold stare of that man in the truck. But the big question still haunted me. Why did Kevin do it? What drove him to be willing to destroy his entire family? Then Miller lowered his voice, as if about to reveal something important. "There's one other person involved in this, and we think you should meet her." I frowned, full of doubt. Miller took me and Claire, who had been cleared to get out of bed, to a small room at the police station, where Matthew and Valerie were playing with a female officer. There, a young woman of about 25 was sitting, her eyes red, her trembling hands holding a cell phone. She stood up when she saw us and spoke shyly. "I'm Jessica. I was the one who sent you the warning message." I looked at her, and a whirlwind of emotions washed over me. Jessica had long black hair, big eyes filled with anguish. She was wearing a simple t-shirt, looking like any young woman you might find at the market. But her gaze, filled with regret and fear, left me frozen. "You were the one who sent me the message?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Jessica nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I never thought things would go this far. I just wanted to save your family." Jessica began to speak, her voice trembling, as if reliving that terrible moment. She said she was Kevin's mistress, but at first, she thought he was a wealthy, single businessman. "He took me to fancy restaurants, gave me expensive gifts, told me he never had a family," Jessica recounted, clutching her phone tightly. I believed him until the morning of the incident. She paused, took a deep breath, and continued. "That day, while Kevin was in the shower, I saw his phone on the table. A message from someone named Mike popped up. Out of curiosity, I opened it and—" Her voice broke, her eyes filled with tears. I read these words. "Tomorrow night the villa will burn. No one will get out alive. We split the insurance money, 40% for you, 60% for me." I was frozen. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Claire, standing next to me, covered her face as her shoulders shook. I took her hand, trying to stay calm even though I was burning with rage inside. Jessica continued. "I was so shocked I couldn't say anything. I quickly took a screenshot as proof and looked for your number in Kevin's contacts. I sent you a message to warn you immediately, but I didn't dare explain much because he could have come back at any moment. She said that when Kevin came out of the bathroom, she had to pretend nothing was wrong, even though she was terrified inside. That night, after Kevin left, I worked up the courage to send more proof and call the police. I never thought I was about to become an accomplice to a murderer. Jessica sobbed, her voice choked. I just wanted to save your family. I looked at her with a whirlwind of emotions. Part of me hated Kevin, the man who had deceived both Claire and this young woman. But I also felt sympathy for Jessica. She was a victim too, caught in Kevin's web of lies without knowing it. You did the right thing, I told her, my voice hoarse. If it weren't for you, we might not be here right now. Jessica lowered her head, letting her tears fall to the floor. Claire beside me silently wiped her tears, not saying a word. I knew she was hurting, not just from Kevin's betrayal, but also from the cruel truth that the man she loved was willing to sacrifice his family for money. A few months after the devastating fire, I found myself sitting in a crowded courtroom, my heart as heavy as a stone. At 65, I had seen many things, but the trial against Kevin and Michael was the first time I felt that justice was beginning to be served, even if it brought with it an unforgettable pain. Claire was beside me, her cold hand gripping mine, her gaze firm, but marked by deep wounds. Matthew and Valerie stayed at a close friend's house, and I was silently grateful that the children didn't have to see their father face his crimes. The murmur in the courtroom died down when the judge banged his gavel, and the trial officially began. The prosecutor, a middle-aged man with a calm but sharp voice, presented the irrefutable evidence one by one. He projected the screenshots of the messages from Jessica's phone onto a large screen, each cold line between Kevin and Mike appearing clearly. At 2 a.m. sharp, the system will activate automatically. Make sure the villa is reduced to ashes without a trace. I felt Claire squeeze my hand even tighter, her breathing becoming shallow. The prosecutor then showed the photos of the gas cans and the timer I had taken in the basement, along with Mike's detailed statement, who ended up confessing everything under the pressure of the evidence. Finally, he revealed the history of Kevin's accumulated debts, the lost sports betting slips, the loan shark debts he had hidden from Claire for years. Each piece of evidence was like a stab, not only to Claire's heart, but to mine as well, as I thought of all the years I had trusted my son-in-law. Jessica was called to the stand. The young woman, her black hair pulled back and her eyes still red, walked up with a shaky but firm posture. "My name is Jessica Miller," she began, her voice broken but clear. "I was deceived by Kevin. He told me he was a single businessman, that he loved me. I believed him, until I saw those horrible messages." She recounted the moment she discovered Kevin's plan, when she happened to read the messages with Mike on his phone. "I was so shocked I couldn't speak. I could only think about saving Mrs. Rose's family, even though I didn't know who they were." Jessica turned to me, her eyes full of regret. "I took screenshots and texted you to warn you as soon as I could. I couldn't let that happen." The courtroom fell silent, with only the murmurs of the audience. I looked at Jessica with both gratitude and sadness. She, though trapped by Kevin's lies, became the one who saved my family. Kevin, sitting at the defendant's table, kept shouting in his defense. "It's all a lie!" he yelled, his voice cracking with panic. "Mrs. Rose hated me from the beginning. She made all this up to destroy my family." He pointed at me, his eyes full of resentment, but I just watched him in silence, unfazed. His words no longer held any weight when the recording of Mike's confession was played, echoing through the room. In it, Mike confessed that Kevin had paid him to set off the explosion in the villa, that the plan was calculated to look like an electrical short to cover up the intention of collecting the insurance money. Kevin hung his head with nothing left to say, sitting silently with trembling hands. In the end, after a tense trial, the judge banged his gavel to deliver the sentence. Kevin and Mike were convicted of attempted murder and premeditated arson, receiving the highest penalty under the law. The sound of the gavel marked the end of the months of pain my family had endured. Claire didn't cry. She remained still, her gaze empty, but without the trembling from before. I knew she was trying to be strong even though her heart was shattered. I took her hand and whispered, "It's all over, honey. We're going to start over." Claire nodded, her lips pressed tight, but in her eyes I saw a new glimmer. It wasn't the naive hope of before, but the determination to move on. Immediately after the trial, Claire filed for divorce. She didn't need advice. She didn't hesitate when signing the papers, determined to get full custody of Matthew and Valerie. "I don't want the kids to grow up under the shadow of a father like that," she told me, her voice firm, very different from the fragile young woman from months ago. Looking at her, I felt both pride and pain. Claire had matured through suffering, but I knew the wound in her heart would take a long time to heal. We moved into a smaller house on the outskirts of Atlanta, without the luxuries of the villa in Clearwater, but filled with warmth and peace. In the front yard, there was a small mango tree where Matthew and Valerie would play every afternoon. Little by little, the children's laughter returned. Pure and innocent, although sometimes I saw a flicker of sadness in their eyes when they remembered the days at the beach. They no longer asked about Kevin, as if they had accepted that their father was not a part of their lives. I don't know if that's the right thing, but I tried to fill that void with all my love. One day, Jessica came by unannounced. She brought a bag of pastries and a new doll for Valerie. "I made it myself. I hope you like it," Jessica said, smiling as she gave the gift to Valerie. The little girl squealed with joy and hugged her tightly. Matthew, always more reserved, also smiled when he received a box of chocolate cookies. Seeing that scene, I felt my heart lighten. Jessica was no longer the mistress in the shadows, but someone special to my family. "Thank you, Jessica," I told her with a sincere voice. "Without you, we wouldn't be here." Jessica shook her head, her eyes moist. "Don't say that. I just did what was right." One quiet night, when Matthew and Valerie were fast asleep, I sat by the window and closed my journal. I wrote one last line, my hand trembling as I remembered those terrible days in Clearwater. "There are scars that will never heal, but because of them, we learn to be stronger, to love each other more, and to cherish every day of life." I looked outside, where the moonlight lit up the mango tree in the yard, and for the first time in many months, I felt a true sense of peace. The nightmare was over, and although the road ahead would still be difficult, I knew my family would get through it because we had each other. After everything we've been through, I just want to leave a simple but profound message. Life can be full of lies, betrayal and cruel traps, but clarity, courage, and family love will always be the strongest shield to withstand it all. Never trust someone so blindly that you hand over your own life. And don't ignore your intuition, because sometimes that's the voice that can save you. Most importantly, cherish every moment with your loved ones, because that love is what lifts us from the ashes, brings back the light, and allows us to keep writing our story. The story you've just heard has had names and places changed to protect the identities of those involved. We don't tell it to judge, but in the hope that someone will listen and stop to reflect. How many mothers are suffering in silence within their own homes? I really wonder, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you choose to stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you dare to face everything to reclaim your voice? I want to know your opinion, because every story can become a candle that lights the way for another. God always blesses, and I am convinced that courage will lead us to better days. For now, on the end screen, I'll leave 2 of the channel's most beloved stories. I'm sure they'll surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.